to show you some options to make ghosts for your Halloween cakes. We can either make it in 3D or 2D, and we will start with the 3D ghost. So I'm going to make it out of Rice Krispies. I melted marshmallows in the microwave, and I'm just adding some rice cereal. Don't follow the recipe on the back. We're just using marshmallows and rice cereal, no butter. And I just poured a bunch in there, and I just want to get it to the correct consistency. I don't use like a recipe. I just kind of eyeball it to see how much I need. That is way too marshmallowy. I need a little bit more of that crispy rice. And do you see how it's like the perfect consistency here? Not too much cereal, not too much marshmallows. This is going on top of a 4-inch cake, so I have a 4-inch cake pan. I got some Crisco in my hands and on that little cutting board, and I just want to form this into a ball to start. So I am just rolling this on that cutting board, and then I want to shape it into like a little ghost shape. So I want to smack it on that cutting board a few times to flatten the bottom, and then I'm trying to keep it a little rounded on the top and let it like taper at the top and be a little wider at the bottom. I put it on top of that cake pan to make sure that it is the correct size, and I'm just trying to get this in the right shape. Sprinkle some cornstarch down on that cutting board, and I'm going to set that aside so it can dry. And the next day, it was 24 hours later, I have that microplane, and I'm just over the sink, and I am shaving off these little bumps that are on here. And once I did that, I'm running my hand over it to remove the extra crumbs. And my hands are clean when I do this. I just washed my hands, and I got some American buttercream icing, and I'm putting a layer of that icing all around this entire Rice Krispie piece. And then in order to smooth it, I'm just running my hands under warm water and smoothing it with my hands. I find that this is the easiest way to do it. I can remove the excess icing and get that in my sink, and just use that water to smooth it out. And I'm going to set that aside. I measured from one side to the other on that Rice Krispie piece, and it was about 10 inches, but I need to roll this fondant out and cut a circle that's slightly smaller. So I have an 8-inch cake pan. I turn it upside down just to get the imprint in there, and then I'm taking my pizza cutter and just cutting this out. Then I got my cake out of the refrigerator. I'm sticking a skewer in the top and getting a little bit of icing down, and I'm carefully putting this little Rice Krispie ball on top, and it does get a little messed up, so I just ran my hands underwater and smoothed that out again. I lifted up that piece of fondant, and I'm putting it on top. Now, at first, this looks like it's a little too short, but this fondant is stretchy. I'm going to be able to stretch it in the right position. Do you see how I'm kind of pulling it down a little bit? Now, that fondant does have the Tylose powder mixed into it, so it is stretchy, and it's not going to rip or tear as I'm doing this. But do you see how I'm trying to just make it wave back and forth so it looks like a ghost? So I'm just working in little sections here. The top of that tier did get a little messed up with the icing, but I can patch that once it goes back in the fridge, so I'm not really worried about that. And now I just took a piece of fondant and I'm smoothing the fondant with that small piece of fondant to make it look nice and pretty. And now let's make the eyes. So I have these circle cutters here, and I'm just trying to make it look like the picture. I cut out 2 circles, and then I'm cutting little V's in the corner here, and these are going to be the eyelashes, so I did 4 of those. And then I'm doing the little accents in the eyes, so I have some piping tips, and I'm just looking at the picture and getting some water behind all of these pieces and sticking them down. And now I'm making the mouth. So I cut a circle out, and then I cut another smaller circle in the center and cut it in half, and there we have the smiley face. Super simple. And let's set that aside. Now I want to put these on here. I got a little bit of water behind each of those, and I'm sticking them down, making sure they're in the right position. And I got some water behind that little smiley face, and it's a kind of a pain in the butt to work with these. That's why I have my tools and everything, but I'm putting the lashes on and just trying to get these in the correct position. And then I just want to color in the cheeks. So I have a little bit of petal dust, and a little bit of this stuff goes a long way. It's better to start small and build it, just like doing your regular makeup. So I'm just trying to give her a little blush. And now I want to make the bow. I have Tylose powder in all of my fondant, so it's going to dry hard. I make bows weird. So let's cut this in half. I'm going to align that top piece on the bottom piece, and then I'm going to cut each side, and then I have to lift that piece up so it doesn't stick and put it back down. And then I'm going to start down on one end, go up in the center, and come down on the other side. Lift it up so it doesn't stick and put it back down, and do the same thing on the bottom. Start on one side, curve down, and then go back up. And then I want to get a little bit of water on the end, fold it in half, fold up and down, and there's a loop, and do the same thing, fold up and down, and then I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and cut a little bit of each of those pieces off. That way it fits together. And then I have a rectangle here. I'm folding in the edges to give it a cleaner look, get some water on the back. I'm starting in the back, I put half of the loop on one and then half of the loop on the other side, and then I'm wrapping that center piece up and tuck it behind there. And if you want this to hold its shape, just roll some paper towels up and stick it in each of the loops. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this on the cake. So I got that out of the fridge. I got a little bit of piping gel underneath the center part and push that down. And I'm just using my fingers and the paintbrush handle to try to get this in the right position. So now let's do the two-dimensional one. I have Tyler's powder in my fondant. I have a piece of non-slip pad underneath my cutting board, my X-Acto knife, a wet paper towel, Dresden tool, and some water. And I measured my cake and I made sure I printed that out the correct size. And that fondant is about 1/4 inch thick. And we are doing my trace, cut, and smooth method to make this. So I'm taking my Dresden tool. I'm tracing this entire thing. Sometimes you have to look past the picture. So I'm looking past the bow and continuing the rest of his head. And I'm just slightly marking where I'm putting the eyes and mouth and the eyebrows. And then since this is a thicker piece of fondant, I need to make a guideline cut first. So I'm just sticking the tip of my X-Acto knife in the fondant to get that guideline. And then once that's done, I can stick the tip all the way down to the cutting board and cut this out. That guideline is going to help prevent you from messing up the top edge of the fondant as you're cutting this out. It's an extra step. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but just trust me, it makes everything look nice and pretty if you do that first. So once I have this all cut out, I'm going to flip it upside down and take my fingers and my tools and just smooth it from the back and then flip it right side up and do the same thing. Anytime you cut anything out of fondant, the edges are going to be a little jagged and you just need to take the time and make it look pretty. I put it on a cutting board to make it easier to transport, and I'm doing the same thing making the eyes. I cut out the black circles, I'm cutting the little triangles for the eyelashes, and then I used a smaller piping tip and cut these little accents in the eyes and putting them down just like I did for that other one. And then I'm making the mouth as well, so I'm just cutting that little piece in half, and then I saved the other half of the mouth for the eyebrows, so I just cut that in half and use that for the eyebrows. And now I'm just looking at the picture and making sure that I put this on here so it's like the picture. The mouth is a little bit between the eyes, right? So you need to see where everything is placed to make it look like the picture so it doesn't look off. I press those eyes down into the fondant so they can kind of countersink down in there so they're not just sticking up off of the top. And I got some water behind everything and I'm sticking it down to make it look like the picture. And that looks beautiful. Now I need to give her some rosy cheeks. So again, I'm just using this petal dust. It's carnation pink. You can find a similar one on Amazon. And now I'm making my bow again. So again, I have the two pieces on top of each other, cut the ends off and then start down on one side, go up in the middle and down on the other side. You always have to lift it up so it doesn't stick together, and then do the same thing, curving down and then coming back up. And then I'm getting some water behind the ends and fold it up and down and did the same thing for the other loop. And I have videos where I show you how I make bows, and I will link that in the description. But again, that centerpiece, I fold in the edges to give it a more finished look. And then I'm making tails on this one. So I cut 2 ribbons and then I cut the bottoms on an angle. Still fold the center up and down. And then I'm attaching that piece to the loop. You can see how I'm getting some water down, and then I'm getting water behind that center piece, and it was a little too long. I had to trim it, and I'm getting one side on there and get a little bit of water in the middle. You can get the other side on there and lift it up and then tuck it behind. I had to get a little bit more water behind it so it would stick. And here is the bow, and let's put this on the ghost. So I got that out of the fridge. I'm just sticking that on there, making sure those little tails aren't in the way. And I got a little bit of piping gel behind it where it's going to stick to the cake, and I'm just going to get the loops in the correct position to make it look nice and pretty. And here's the 2D ghost. So you can either do the 3-dimensional one on the very top or a 2-dimensional one on the side of your cake, but either way, they're an adorable little decoration to make for your Halloween cakes.